They say the chains of slavery were broken. They say the past is buried. But some names never stay dead. In 1878, a town in Georgia suffered 47 disappearances, all linked to one whispered name. A name spoken only at night, only in fear. Kunta. Not the story America told you. Not the story printed in textbooks. This is the version pastors refused to preach. The story officials burned. The one passed in trembling voices through families who swore never to record it. Because Kunta Kinte did not die broken. He remembered every scream, every lash, every stolen child. And something ancient awakened in the silence between his heartbeat and death. This is the forgotten chapter they never wanted spoken aloud. Tonight, it finally breathes. Before history warped his name, before Hollywood softened his edges, Kunta Kinte arrived in America with his mind unbroken. His captors feared it. He remembered his land, not just family, but ritual, bloodlines, burial grounds, guardians older than scripture. When they whipped him, the scars formed patterns, symbols that overseers claimed were random, but witnesses swore the scars looked deliberate, like unreadable writing carved into him by a hand unseen. Workers said his wounds took longer to close than others, and when they did, they sealed with colors not common to human skin, dark red, almost bruised purple, like the mark refused to die. When he whispered at night, others heard responses, not in English, not in any tongue known on the plantation, but something low, distant, chanting through the walls, through the trees. The slaves believed the soil listened. The masters feared it. The first incident was small. Children sleeping in the loft screamed through the night. Every night, the same words. He's walking. Plantation records noted 9 children suffered night terrors so violent they drew blood clawing at their own skin. They described a tall figure limping, dragging a broken foot, but moving faster than any man should. They said he whispered stories of home, of roots tied to ancestors, of rivers that remembered their names. But the children would not repeat the last part, the part that made them wake shaking, crying, vomiting. He says we are not forgotten. Parents begged the overseer to move them. He refused. A week later, the children were gone. All 9. Without footprints. Without doors broken. Without a sound. The mothers wailed that night, and witnesses swore something wailed back from the trees. The plantation's church was built not for God, but for control. The pews faced the pulpit like subjects bending toward a king. The windows were too small, suffocating the room in stale light. And in its tower hung a bell that never rang. The priest was new, pale, unblinking, always sweating through his collar though the air stayed cool. He demanded discipline, obedience, silence. He preached a strange gospel, one where sin was inheritance, and punishment was holy arithmetic. When Kunta refused to kneel in that church, the priest asked a question that sent shivers through the enslaved. What shadows chase your shadow? How did he know the nightmares spreading through the quarters? How did he know the name whispered only in fear? That Sunday service lasted longer than any before, but no scripture was read. Only warnings. Only watchfulness. The congregation left convinced the man of God was terrified, but not of the devil. When Kunta was punished again, the whip cracked. Once, twice, 29 times. Blood pooled beneath him. But the next morning, the scars were open again, wet, unhealed, as if made seconds ago. By evening they closed, perfectly. The next dawn, open again. The overseer accused someone of sneaking into the barn to cut him at night. Guards were placed. They reported no intruders, no movement, except a sound like breathing, slow and deep, when Kunta slept. Doctors called to examine him refused to return. One confessed before leaving, pale and shaking. There is handwriting under his skin. The overseer demanded what language. The doctor answered, "This is no language meant to be spoken." Section 6. The storm that would not touch him. A storm slammed the plantation, black skies by day, thunder so violent it shook the rafters loose. Workers fled the fields, except Kunta, standing barefoot, face raised to the sky. Wind swirled around him but never touched him. Rain split around his body, leaving the soil dry in a perfect circle. Witnesses stared frozen. The storm moved with him, parting like water around stone. The priest watched from the church window, gripping his cross until his knuckles bled. He recognized something. Not from Africa. Not from the Bible. Something older than both. When lightning struck the church roof, he collapsed to his knees and finally admitted what nobody else dared say. Kunta is calling something, or something is calling him. To break the haunting, the master sold Kunta, far south, never to return. The night wagon carried him off, chains rattling rhythmically, almost musical. As the wheels rolled away, the earth shook violently. Witnesses swore the ground screamed. Livestock panicked. Dogs ran howling. The priest locked himself inside the church and prayed to a god he suddenly wasn't sure was listening. By sunrise, 7 acres of fertile soil had blackened, grass curled to ash. The well water tasted metallic, unclean. Families whispered about the children still missing. The nightmares stopped, but emptiness replaced them. Heavy, suffocating, like breathing in grief that wasn't yours. A calm with no peace. A silence that waited. Kunta was loaded onto a trade vessel bound for Louisiana, sold again before arriving. But that ship, the Mercy's Wake, never reached land. Weeks passed. No arrival. No wreckage. No bodies. Just gone. A fisherman found its logbook floating miles from shore. Pages burned around the edges as if flame touched only the words describing him. The final entry read, "He prays in the dark with his eyes open. He answers voices we cannot hear." And last night, the ocean answered back. 15 years later, rumors whispered through Georgia that a limping silhouette roamed the woods. Never seen directly, only glimpsed when lanterns flickered. Families locked doors earlier. Dogs refused to bark or fled. The church bell still never rang. The priest drank himself blind, trying to forget the patterns burned into Kunta's back. The symbols he later found carved into ancient stones older than any nation. He resigned abruptly, leaving a note only 2 words long. They followed. After emancipation, the plantation land became an orphanage for black children. The nightmares returned immediately. One girl, mute since birth, spoke her first word at midnight. Kunta. She pointed to the window, glass frosted from inside. Though summer heat smothered the night. When caretakers checked the yard, they found footprints in the soil, deep impressions as if weighted by chains. The girl cried without sound, shaking violently. The next morning, she drew the same symbols carved into the priest's abandoned Bible. Church officials seized the orphanage drawings and the priest's Bible, sealing them inside a locked container marked confidential. Witnesses overheard one bishop whisper, "If this spreads, no one will believe our history, or worse, they will." The church had survived war, scandals, plagues, but not the idea that the oppressed are remembered by forces older than heaven. The bishop ordered everything destroyed. But destruction is not the same as forgetting. Black elders spoke of guardian spirits, not ghosts, not demons, memories with intention. If trauma is deep enough, the soul multiplies. Kunta's suffering carried not just personal pain, but the weight of millions yet to scream. They believed the scars were not curses. They were invitations, warnings, a map carved into flesh. The elders say America didn't free the enslaved, it just changed the chains. By 1901, disappearances clustered around the old plantation site. Hunters, travelers, surveyors, all gone without struggle. The land was seized, barbed wire raised, patrolled, documents labeled cultural containment. Officials claimed chemical contamination. Farmers whispered other things. They heard chains dragging across fields with no footsteps attached. Excavation crews found an underground chamber, perfectly intact, unflooded, untouched, though centuries old. Inside, symbols matching Kunta's scars. The foreman locked the chamber, swearing never to return. That night he dreamed of standing barefoot in soil that moved like breathing. In his dream, someone whispered, "I was stolen once, but I walk home in every generation." Storytellers sanitized Kunta. Hollywood softened him. Schools reduced him to a paragraph. But suppressed history has gravity. Truth pulls. Truth pursues. Kunta was not a symbol of victimhood. He was a testament to memory sharper than steel. And America was afraid, not of the past, but of accountability that walks. In 1922, a family restoring the old church discovered why the bell never chimed. A chain had been wrapped around its tongue, welded shut, never meant to move. The chain links were inscribed, the metal etched with words impossible for a blacksmith. They matched the orphan girl's drawings. And the priest's Bible. and the scars across a back that should have become dust. During renovation, workers heard breathing from beneath the church. Not wind, rhythm, human rhythm. They fled, reporting the ground felt like a long. The site closed again. But curses don't require consent. They only require remembrance. The more Black Americans spoke Kunta's name, the more the nation edited it. You cannot oppress a story if a story refuses to die. Kunta became myth, then symbol, then entertainment. Because fiction is less dangerous than memory. Here it is, the piece officials fear most. What if trauma does not fade? What if it condenses, accumulates, learns? One man's pain multiplied through millions of stolen lives could become a force, a storm with intention, a shadow with a name, a walking memory. If you speak a name long enough, it answers. If a nation buries truth deep enough, it rises. Tonight, you heard a version unfiltered, unapproved, unsoftened. There are places in Georgia where the soil still turns black after rain, where dogs refuse to cross, where chains are heard on windless nights. And if you walk alone and whisper Kunta, some say the earth shifts, because history is not past, and trauma is not silent. And what America tried to forget, never forgot America.